Hello, MBA applicants, and welcome back to the Touch MBA podcast. I am your host, Darren. This week, I brought on Shari Hubert, who is the Associate Dean of Admissions at Duke University's Fuqua School of Business. We discuss what makes the Duke Fuqua MBA unique, what makes their culture unique, the school's admissions process, career opportunities after graduating, and more. A few words come to mind after my conversation with Shari. I really enjoyed our conversation. The first is flexibility. Seems like Duke has just massive resources and opportunities for students to customize their MBA experience, whether it's the number of electives to choose from, the number of concentrations, the 5 different centers students can work with, the 60 plus student clubs. I think there are just a lot of resources and opportunities for Duke Fuqua MBA students to forge their own path, if you will, during their MBA program. The second word that comes to mind is community. It's very clear from our conversation that Duke is trying to cultivate a unique community, one that is supportive but ambitious, that's authentic, that has integrity, that has a diversity of views and opinions, and where students can really support each other during the MBA program. I hope this helps those of you applying to Duke, as well as those of you considering what Duke offers, right? Program with massive resources, that's very flexible, but that has this very supportive student culture. Before we jump into the show, just a reminder that at Touch MBA, you can get a free profile review. This includes business school selection help. If you tell us what your must-have criteria is, we'll point you towards potential best fit schools, as well as evaluate your competitiveness at your target schools. We'll also give you some suggestions on how we think you can improve your candidacy to your MBA programs. So all that is for free at touchmba.com. All right, so let's get straight to my conversation with Shari. Here we go. It is my pleasure and honor to introduce the next guest of the Touch MBA podcast. She is the Associate Dean of Admissions at the Fuqua School of Business at Duke University. She's been a guest on the show before, and so I'm really excited to have her back on. Shari Hubert, welcome back to the Touch MBA podcast. Great to see you again.
Thank you so much, Darren. It's so great to see you too. We were just reminiscing that I can't believe that it's been close to over 10 years since the last time I had the pleasure of being on your podcast. So I am so excited. Glad that you're still in the business of doing this.
Yes.
And so excited to be on the podcast today and to share insights with your listeners. So thanks for the invitation.
Oh, no. Thank you for coming on. And so before we jump right into it, Shari, could you please first let our listeners know about your main responsibilities at Fuqua?
Sure. So as the Associate Dean, I oversee all of our admissions at the business school, and we have 10 degree programs. So I'll start with our suite of MBA programs. So we have the traditional 2-year full-time MBA program, and we call it our daytime MBA program. We have an accelerated version of that daytime MBA program, which is 1 year, and we call it the Accelerated Daytime MBA program, or AMBA. We also have 2 sets of executive MBA programs for working professionals. First is our weekend executive MBA program that comes to campus once a month and then has some distance in between. And then we have the Global Executive MBA program that has its residencies all around the world. And then we have a suite of specialized masters, and these are pre-experienced residential specialized masters. One's called the Master of Quantitative Management in Business Analytics, which has 4 different tracks. The other is the Masters of Management Studies. Our Foundations of Business is the version that's in Durham. And then we have a similar version that's in Kunshan, at the Kunshan University in China. And then finally, our last set of working professional suites of programs is the Masters of Science in Quantitative Management and Health Analytics. We have the same Masters of Science in Quantitative Management and Business Analytics. And then we have an accelerated version of that online business analytics for those people who already have their MBA, but want to upskill in terms of their data and analytics skill sets. And so, yeah, that's the suite of 10 programs. So I like to jokingly say that we have something for every age and stage of someone's career.
Yeah. I mean, just really quickly, what is the most challenging part of your role, would you say?
Hmm. I would say, just making sure, well, first of all, I mean, internally, it's just making sure that I am supporting our team. We have a team of 34 wonderful colleagues that I work with, and just making sure that they feel positive and encouraged and excited about the mission and the work that we do. So that internally, that's always a challenge. And then externally, I would say just making sure that we're continuing to promote the wide range of our opportunities and making sure that folks still understand the value of these business degrees in an increasingly competitive market and across multiple generations who have different views on the value of kind of business management degrees. So just making sure that folks understand the real transformational experience that these degrees can have for yourself, your family, your community is at times challenging from year to year, but it's always so much fun. I mean, like I said, I work with such wonderful colleagues. Our team is so dedicated, and they're such experts in what they do. And it really is a pleasure to be able to be in a career where my I feel like my role has my career has come full circle. I've really benefited from the value of an MBA, and it's been so life changing for me. And so to be able to then help others also who aspire to that kind of transformation in their own careers, it's really just a blessing to to have a career where your mission and your purpose are all combined.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's a perfect lead in to my first question because Shari, you're a Harvard Business School grad. You've worked at other top business schools, and now you've been at Duke for 6, 7 years. So the first question I ask always is, what makes the Duke Fuqua School MBA unique from all the other top programs, in your opinion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, look, the way I answer this question normally to people who ask me is first I ask them what's important to them, because I do feel like there's a program for everyone out there, right? This degree is broad enough and transferable enough and there's so many wonderful schools out there that you can achieve your goals wherever. So what's really important is what's important to you, right? What are the criteria that you're using, and that the rationale for what you want this degree to mean in your life, and then try and find a school or a program that matches up to what's important to you first. And so for me at Duke, I would say one of the things that I feel like are one of our unique and unequaled assets is the triple threat leadership values that we uphold. And they really come from our Dean, Bill Boulding, who I admire so greatly. And it's all about thinking about the combination of the skills that are really going to be most effective for true leadership. And one, it's, IQ or intellectual capability. There's this EQ or emotional intelligence. And then the final element that I think sometimes is missing is DQ. We call it decency quotient, which means wanting to genuinely do right by others. And every part of our curriculum aims to develop these qualities in our students. We look for students who possess these triple threat capabilities coming into the program, and then our program really helps to refine that. And we believe that, this type of leadership is not only essential, but is also a winning business strategy, because when someone believes their leaders have their best interests at heart, then they're going to give their very best for those leaders and for that institution or for those organizations, right? And in a world where there's so much, polarization, marginalization, and isolation, having leadership that really combines all of these three elements is so critical. I would say another thing that is really interesting for, in terms of what we offer at Fuqua is this sense of, we call it paired principles, but they emanate from these notion of a very, very student-driven culture. And so many years ago, our students developed these sets of norms where they said they would hold themselves accountable and each other accountable for. And it's a way in which they want to experience their program or their 2 years in a way that really is aligned with our Team Fuqua values and culture. So they call them the paired principles. The principles are authentic engagement, supportive ambition, collective diversity, impactful stewardship, loyal community, and an uncompromising integrity. And every term, students will vote on their classmates who demonstrate these particular sets of principles in their experience. So I really feel like it's a way that we put our money where our mouth is, or at least our students do, in terms of the values and behaviors that underpin these principles. And so I think all of these kinds of aspects and elements really then support this notion of what we call Team Fuqua, right? Which is the way we define Team Fuqua is bringing out the strengths in others in order to move towards common purpose. But you need to, people need to feel like they not only are a part of a diverse team or a team that values difference, but they also have to feel a sense of belonging on that team, right? That the teams and individuals on those teams have their best interests at heart, that they can be their authentic selves in order for you to want to give your best or want to, truly allow your strengths to be brought out, right, towards common purpose. And so I would say those are the aspects of Fuqua that I really feel allow us to stand out.
Could you just share those paired principles one more time?
Sure. The first one is called authentic engagement. So how are we engaging with each other in kind of real, meaningful ways? The second one is supportive ambition, right? This notion of I can be ambitious in terms of what I want for myself, but it doesn't have to be at the expense of my classmate or others, right? I want to be supportive so that everyone is able to achieve what they're here to achieve. And then the third one is collective diversity. Again, really the sense of Team Fuqua, like we value the difference, right? We celebrate difference. The fourth one is impactful stewardship, right? So we want to make sure that we are stewards not only of the Fuqua brand, the institution, the values of the institution, but also our surrounding community as well and each other. And then the fifth one is the sense of loyal community. So we don't want to necessarily, we want to be right. We want to be a community that really supports and uplifts each other, but also be a community that understands the impact that we have as an institution that sits in a larger context of Durham, right? And the citizens and the society that either benefit or sometimes don't benefit, right, from an institution being in its backyard. So our students really are very thoughtful and care about the impact that they have on the broader Durham community as well, and not just, sitting in their bubble, right, on campus. And then the last one is uncompromising integrity. Again, just really making sure that we are trying our best to do the right thing, right, to do the hard thing. Sometimes doing the right thing is the hard thing, but doing that right thing.
Thank you. No, thank you for sharing those and in more detail. I mean, I'm curious, going back to the IQ, EQ, DQ idea is like, how is that brought into the curriculum? Or
yes, so we have So we have a course called Business and Common Purpose in Business, and it's your second year, and so they talk about aspects of being like a CEO or a leader of an organization and the challenges that you have to maybe face, right? The conflicting challenges that sometimes you have to face as a CEO, where you have a number of different stakeholders. And then how do you think about, using those three different types of leadership principles? We also have LEO, Leadership, Ethics, and Organizations, which is a course that you take in your very first year. And it talks about organizational leadership, but brings in aspects of that. And then a lot of, I would say, the triple threat leadership is really kind of not just curricular, but in between times, like the co-curricular, just, students kind of are able to hone these kinds of leadership values when they are, leading their clubs or leading their classmates, or they're on the MBA association. So I would say, think about them less in terms of we're going to teach you what IQ, EQ, and DQ is, but it's an underpinning value, or it's a value that kind of underpins the way in which we set expectations for how you show up in the community, how you go through your 2 years, what we stand for, the kind of aspirational leadership you're trying to attain.
Very interesting. And before we dive into, like the academics, I'm wondering how much interaction there is between all those students from all your various programs.
So every Friday, that's a great question. So every Friday we call, again, this is another tradition that was started by students, I think back in the 80s or 90s. But every Friday we call it Fuqua Friday. So at the end of every week, the entire community comes together and celebrates. And so it's across all programs. We have dinner and there's beverages and dinner. And sometimes there's also different activities, or particular clubs might host a particular Friday. We have volunteer activities, sometimes with Rise for Hunger. We might have a silent auction and to donate funds to Special Olympics. So sometimes there are themes, but every Friday, the entire community across all 10 degree programs comes together. If
Cool.
If the executive MBA programs are in residence, they are most welcome as well. And so it's just an opportunity to engage across those programs.
That's really nice, because I just feel like that's such an asset, right? If I was going to Duke to meet people, not just in my class, but in all these other programs at different stages in their careers, as you said.
Yeah. And I think also probably some other ways, these are more informal and not as structured, but we have over 60 MBA clubs, and many of those clubs are social or affinity in nature, right? And so the Greater China Business Club, they are open to students across all of the different degree programs. It's an affinity club. The Business in Africa Club, same thing. So there are clubs that are affinity based, and that also are opportunities for students across programs to connect with each other as well.
Got it. And so, and academically, how do you feel Fuqua really stands out?
Academically? So I would say that in terms of kind of what I'm excited about with respect to our academics, you'll probably start to see more courses in climate and AI. We're looking at that. So we're expecting to kind of connect climate and business. We've actually approved an elective in the sustainable operations realm. We're offering a climate-centered GATE, which GATE is our global academic travel experience. And we're offering a climate-centered GATE to Northern Europe next year. We also expect a faculty member may propose some courses in modern AI and business. So you'll probably see some more of that. We'll be offering the first version of a new seminar or a lab class focused on venture capital, which is a complement to our seminar and lab on private equity. And that's all a part of our Duke Innovation and Entrepreneurship offerings. And just as well, some of the new things on the horizon is all the university's entrepreneurship resources and offerings are now housed at Fuqua, interestingly.
So when I was doing my research before this interview, I saw that you guys have 17 concentrations that you offer, I believe, as well as a number, I think it's 5 or 6 centers that I'm very interested in. And I'm wondering if you could just speak a little broadly about like how those centers might play a role in the education, the experience for MBAs, as well as how the concentrations work. How early do students have to kind of declare what they want to concentrate in, and how that whole process works?
Sure. No, absolutely. So in addition to the concentrations really are made up of like over 100 different electives, right? So we have functional concentrations like decision sciences, marketing, operations, strategic consulting, fintech. We have topical concentrations, for example, diversity, equity, inclusion, entrepreneurship, leadership, that kind of thing. We also have certificates, right? Which are, a deeper dive than just the concentrations. And we have 2 certificates. We have a finance certificate, and then we have a health sector management certificate. Our entire MBA is now STEM-based, STEM certified. And so just normally you're going through the 2 years, you concentration, no concentration, you will get a STEM-based degree. And the concentrations you can either take concentration and a certificate or up to 2 concentrations. You can start your first year, and there's usually about 6 electives per concentration. So, you're going to go through your core the first couple of terms, but very quickly within that the spring, you can quickly start to be eligible to take electives or any of those experiential courses that we have, such as the Global Academic Travel Experience or the Fuqua Consulting Practicum or Fuqua on Board. All those opportunities are experiential in nature, but they also are for credit. Or you can start taking electives as well. If you waive out of any course, right? You can start taking your electives. Not every student does fulfill and complete a concentration. There's a high number that do, but not every student, you don't have to, right? So people tend to use the concentrations to help refine their curricular experience. Maybe they're trying to pivot into a particular career and they are using those sets of courses to really demonstrate that they are deep in knowledge, right? Or perhaps they already have some kind of sector knowledge, but they want to deepen it. Or they're kind of switching altogether and they're using that to really demonstrate competence. Or or some students just don't do any concentrations, take whatever courses they want in whatever sequence. Maybe it's based on faculty, popular faculty or whatnot. And that's okay too. Some people start a concentration, but don't end up finishing it. Some people end up not thinking they're going to do a concentration, but lo and behold, they've taken enough electives to qualify for the concentration by the time they graduate. So it really is, that's when I think of the hallmarks of our program again, and our curriculum is that it's extremely flexible. It's extremely flexible. And you mentioned we have the centers that also, if you layer that on, they are co-curricular in nature, but there are courses that are tied to certain centers based on the sectors that you're interested in, right? So that's another way to round out your competency, your networking, your familiarity with a particular sector, your expertise is to also align yourself with these centers. And through these centers, you might take certain elective courses, or you might take certain experiential courses. For instance, we have the Duke Innovation in Entrepreneurship, where they have a new ventures courses 1, 2, 3 that you can take in addition to all the other co-curricular activities that they have. Or you might do Case I3, which is a part of our Center for Advanced Entrepreneurship, right? Case I3 is, again, you are actually helping project manage an social impact organization and working with a team of students to help that organization develop kind of its impact goals. So that's something that's very concrete. So it really depends on where your area of interest is. In the health sector management program, certificate program, you start off with a boot camp, which is you get class credit for. There's a practicum that you can do with a Duke Hospital Health System. There's a week in DC to understand health policy, right? So there's so many different things that are both
it's incredible.
This kind of curricular and co-curricular in nature as well. Now, we have introduced several new courses. So we've introduced topics of finance and data analytics and the future of work. We're also offering some courses in a shorter format so that students can explore their interests in about half the time of a full course. In 3-week sessions, these short courses allow for professors to tailor content really quickly on topical issues. For example, this fall, we're teaching a short course on sustainable operations, as I'd mentioned, and we're addressing the demand for more sustainable practices, as well as the potential for innovation in this area. These are, I think, 1-credit courses. We also recently welcomed 7 new faculty members, one in finance, strategy, economics, and decision sciences. And they came to us from Harvard, the London School of Business, Princeton, Northwestern, Chicago Booth, and the National University of Singapore. And their research interests range from corporate engagement in politics to intellectual property rights, to contract theory, to how social environments influence decision-making. So we're really excited to see the ways this fresh new research and expertise will translate into a richer learning environment for our students.
And Durham, North Carolina, why, especially say for listeners who have never been to the United States before, I'm wondering if you could help us paint a picture about what that would be like, what that sort of MBA living experience would be like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first of all, for those folks who may not know, but North Carolina was ranked as the #1 state for business by CNBC for the second straight year in a row, which we're excited about. And I would say Durham has a strong entrepreneurial and biotech presence, and mainly due to the Research Triangle Corridor. It's the home to more than 150 Fortune 100 companies and multiple accelerators and startups that have opened in the downtown area. Durham's been ranked one of the top startup hubs outside of Silicon Valley, and it's a top city for business, tech, and people under the age of 35, interestingly. I'd say the city is centrally located between the beaches in eastern North Carolina and the mountains in western North Carolina. And that's something that I was really surprised about. Like when I came in from Washington, D.C., and I don't know, I just always thought North Carolina was just kind of really flat for whatever reason. But I didn't realize that just it has such diversity in its topography, which is really nice. So lots of lush forests and parks and lakes and mountains and beaches. I mean, just a lot of variety. North Carolina also offers many great restaurants and cultural events, from art, theater, live music, you name it. I say it's kind of, to me, it's Durham in particular is a little like a what did I call it? It's like a mix between maybe Austin and Brooklyn, kind of got a hipster feel to it, Durham does in particular. It's also, the RTP is also very accessible with respect to flights in and out of the area, which is important for our students, right? Who will be on flights and planes to get to internship interviews or to get in around and about, see their family, things like that. And so there are lots of flights to and from New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, DC. DC is under an hour. New York's about an hour. Boston's about 2 hours. There's direct flights out to the West Coast, direct flights to London, new direct flight to Germany. Like so it's very accessible and very easy to get in and out if you need to. However, the interesting thing about our students, and I think one of the reasons that they really enjoy this area, is that we don't have classes on Wednesdays. Unlike some schools, who don't have classes on Fridays, our classes are Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So because we have classes on Fridays, it encourages more students to stay over the weekend. And so students tend to hang out together rather than scattering on weekends because of this particular type of schedule. And it creates stronger cohorts and networks both on and off campus, which I think is important. We're increasingly seeing our students fall in love with Durham as a result, to the point that some have negotiated remote work offerings with employers so that they continue to live here even after they graduate. You can't beat the moderate climate year round. There's loads of outdoor activities. There's great healthcare. It's, a family friendly environment, as well as fun for young professionals who are single, because that's important too. Both are important. The research triangle is very vibrant and inclusive with, over 1,000 people. I just read a statistic, over 1,000 people move to the area every month. BCG has a new office here. Google has a Durham hub. Apple, Microsoft are coming. So again, there's a lot of really great reasons to be in Durham, whether it's just for 1 year, which is our specialized master's, they're just 10-month programs, or it's for 2 years, right? Our daytime MBA program, or it's for a lifetime.
Wow. What is your favorite part about Durham? Just really quickly.
So my favorite part, I would say, I love the farmers markets. So every single, there's so many different communities and bedroom neighborhoods. I mean, because with Durham, you're in Durham, but you also have, because of the RTP, you have access to Raleigh, Chapel Hill, a bunch of other bedroom communities, and every one of these has their own farmers market. So the quality of the food is just out of this world in terms of from farm to restaurant. I mean, there's so many organic and just high quality food here, which I really enjoy. And I have the weather. I have to say that's probably the biggest thing I love ever since moving down here. I was like, okay, I will never move and live in another cold weather place. So I've gotten really spoiled by the moderate weather and warm climate down here, I have to say. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm from California, so I think once you're used to that, it's tough. It's tough to change.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Shari, let's talk about admissions now. So let's start with the first question about fit qualities. If you have fit qualities that you're looking for from MBA applicants, are they related to those paired principles and triple threat leadership that you mentioned? Are they different?
Great question. So I'm going to answer this first by saying that instead of the term fit, I prefer to use belonging, because fit insinuates that you're having to not be your authentic self, but to morph into something else in a construct that's already set. Whereas, what we look at is we want to see your authentic self. We want and we value you as you are, and in hoping that you will find belonging in a community that also has just as unique and individuals as well, right? So who are themselves being their authentic self. So, we're looking for students who will not only be successful in a rigorous academic environment, but also share our belief that business can, help change the world, of course, for the better when we work together, when we are open and appreciative of other perspectives, other lived experiences, other backgrounds, other races, other ethnicities, other dimensions, other languages. So we're also looking for authenticity in this respect, right? People bringing their true selves to the community and having that come out in their applications. We're looking for humility. And I love the way our dean talks about it. Humility is this notion that I feel like sometimes it's just as, you have to be just as confident and to be humble and to understand that there are absolutely people who may know more than you and that you can learn from everyone, right? And that takes just as much confidence to be humble. And so we really value, humility is a really strong value at Fuqua. And then a genuine appreciation for the strength that lies in difference. Again, like I said, we're really looking for people who understand that, because for us, Team Fuqua, that's at the core of it, right? Teams, you always hear these, right? A great team is not a team of that's homogenous. So for us, people who really understand and value and believe in the strength that lies in difference. We also believe that's what it will take for that student to be successful in our environment, right, in our community, which we define, again, Team Fuqua as a way of working that draws out the strengths in others. And that's why we need people this humility allows someone else to want to bring out the strengths in their classmate, right, in their peer on the team, right? To acknowledge that, hey, there's something that you might know or have or want to say or have your voice is counts, your voice is important, and I want to hear it. And our team will be the better for it if you are able to have a voice and feel like you can use your voice to make our team better. It's a very student-driven culture, as I mentioned, and so we also are looking for people who have demonstrated leadership and involvement prior to coming here, because then we look for how will you contribute to your classmates' experience, right? And so, that may or may not be for everyone. So we're really looking for those who feel they can thrive in this kind of environment and have that come out through their application or have that come out through their interview. So, yeah. And, the whole curriculum, how teams are designed, the learning teams are designed in a way that supports this notion of Team Fuqua. The curriculum's designed in that way. Again, how our students engage in their extracurricular activities is designed in that way to really emphasize leadership, engagement, contribution, initiative, things like that.
Have you read the book Crucial Conversations or heard of it?
Wait a minute, who's the author of that? Yeah, I've heard of it. Now,
many authors.
Absolutely.
There's like 5 or 6 authors that I can't remember.
Yeah.
There's training for it, but it's this idea that when you're having these very difficult conversations, emotional, high stakes, controversial sort of situations or conversations, that the most important thing is to create a sense of safety so that people can share their perspective. So you create this shared pool of meaning. And to me, it's such an important skill, and it's something I'm so terrible at. I'm trying to get better at, but it sounds like this kind of matches the type of learning environment you guys are striving to create at Duke. It's very hard to not jump to conclusions, not stick to your own biases, and be, as you said, humble or open-minded or confident, all three, to kind of put your meaning into that shared pool and then also take something back or be willing to be changed by what you hear, right, from other parties. But I'd like to talk about what you mentioned about contribution, how Fuqua is such a student-driven culture. With the sort of flexibility that your program offers, it's such a asset, but it could be a challenge too, I think, for someone who might not have a very clear plan and I'm wondering in the application, if you have any advice for applicants, like, because I know you kind of point to this in one of your essay questions about cultivating a culture of engagement and mentioning how do you plan to contribute, right, to the school. And I'm wondering how specific of a response you're looking for there. Like, is it almost kind of like a business plan for contribution in a sense? Like, this is what's at the school and this is how I plan to contribute. Like, what are you looking for there? Yeah.
Yeah, no, great question. So first of all, it should start with what's important to you, because then it will make more sense, right? It'll seem more logical. It'll be more realistic. And it won't sound like you just took three clubs that we offer, and you
Right.
just put them on a piece of paper, right? Without any connection to what's important to you, or to perhaps, and it could be something either that has been important to you in the past that you want to continue to hone, refine, provide leadership, right, around once you're in our community, or it could be something that is very different from you that you are inquisitive about, that you want to get more exposure to, right? Or you want to learn about. And we do ask you to kind of narrow it down so that there is a little bit more focus to like, what's the three, like there's so many, it also kind of demonstrates that there's so many things that you can do in business school and you can't do it all. You might want to do it all, but you're not going to be able to do it all. So it also helps us understand kind of what your priorities are, what's important to you. But we also recognize that, these are things that you put down at the beginning of a 2-year journey. So we're not tying you. You're not being tied to it. A lot of people change their minds. A lot of people get into the environment and realize, oh my God, like I can't do all of this. Or, you know what? I've been exposed to a course or a person that has now changed my trajectory, and I want to learn and be exposed to something different, some other club, some other activity. So it's really just us trying to understand, one, how have you engaged with our community to learn in a real way about what we have to offer? And then how is what we have to offer connected to what's important to you in terms of how you want to show up in these 2 years, and how you also what you can also contribute, right? And so I would encourage people, if they talk to students and talk to our community or alumni and something triggers something in them that they want to talk about in that particular section, to let us know, well, hey, I had a conversation with X, Y, and Z. You don't have to remember the person's name, but let us know how you've engaged already in connecting with our community such that it has informed what you put down there on that piece of paper for that essay question. Because I think that also gives us a sense of how much you've already invested in really trying to sincerely get to know our community versus just reading something on a website and, putting something down.
Absolutely. What else for you? What gets you excited when you receive a certain application, or you see someone's resume, or you're reading an essay, or during the interview?
Let's see. I think that's a hard question to answer. There's so many different examples that, there's so many, everyone's so unique, right? So there's probably not one thing that someone could consistently do, or many people could consistently do, that would always get someone excited, because you're also interacting with different people throughout this process too, right? But I would say people who, are proactive, people who show up and attend our events, people who aren't shy to come up and say hi to us or reach out to us, people who are thoughtful and considerate. So it's interesting when you are in these big forums, or you might meet people at a big fair. It's very interesting to just observe how they interact with each other too, right? So everyone would like to try and talk. You want to talk to everyone who you can, but it's also interesting to see, well, if you're talking to a group of people, like, do people allow others to talk, right? Or are they monopolizing the conversation? Do they encourage people to come into the circle and encourage them to ask their question, right? Or do they try and just get all their questions out? So it's like kind of interesting also to see people and how they interact with each other throughout this process. That really also demonstrates kind of who they are, what their values are. Are they kind, decent, considerate, right? Those things also tell us, their behaviors also tell us kind of, do they align with the values as well? And not just kind of what they're saying, right, on a piece of paper. So I get excited when I see people who are emulating the values that we hold dear. in my interactions with them. I just get excited to talk to people. Like, that's my favorite part of the job. That's why I got into this, the coaching and the mentoring and the kind of career counseling, just the helping them understand that they are good and great as they are. It's interesting. I sometimes, in particular, there's one conversation I had with someone, and she had come from an Ivy League institution. She was an engineer at a great company, and she was contemplating getting her MBA, but she thought she had to get a new high-powered job. She had to start a whole business even before applying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, no, like you are fine and great and good as you are and ready, right? So I really get excited to talk to people who may be similar to myself. I was first generation, who may not understand or know or have access to the resources in the power of this degree. And so for me, that's always exciting to talk to people and make them aware of the value of this kind of education and what it can mean for themselves and their families. And I know that's not something that every applicant can use in their,
Sure, but
I don't know if it's great guidance or not, but I would say in terms of your applicants, how they can wow is to, if they're in person, be considerate, but be proactive, be kind, be enthusiastic. One of the things I would say that excites me is when people don't come up to me and say, so tell me about why Fuqua is better than X, Y, and Z school. Or what's the difference between your school and X, Y, and Z school? What I like to tell people when that doesn't happen, or when they instead, what excites me instead, if they were to come up to me and say, hey, you know what, I'm looking for X, Y, and Z in the programs that I'm considering, or what's important to me in this journey of trying to pursue my degree is X, Y, and Z. How do you think Fuqua would be able to help me be successful? Or how do you think Fuqua might be able to help me get there, right? Because it's absolutely my job to do that and just talk about the great things and the things that I feel like we can do to help that person. I only know my school best, right? I don't know someone else's school, and it's not a good look for me to compare our school to someone else's school. All these schools are great schools and great institutions. You can get a great education. Again, I believe there's an MBA program out there for everyone. And there's so many things that are very similar across our programs versus different, right? And so there's some table stakes that, all schools have a similar level of caliber from a table stakes perspective, which you're going to be looking for. And so the difference or the nuance is really in you talking to that community, right? And matching up what you experience in that community with what is important to you, right? That you got to start with what's important to you first.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I really try to advocate knowing what your must-haves are, to my audience, because that's really the better starting point than, what top-ranked school can I get into? Because then you might be left disappointed if you're just chasing rankings or reputation. But if you start with what's must-have, what's so important to you, then you can find a better school, a better option.
Love that.
Any other tips for how applicants can improve their chances of admissions?
Mm-hmm. So, I'll start by saying I know it can be challenging sometimes in this process, but I wanted to start with the perspective of schools, or at least the admissions office, right? So we're looking at 3 different dimensions. We're looking at you as a person, right? The personal dimension, what you bring, your merits, all that stuff, right? We're looking at the pool, right? The pool in which you apply. And then we're looking at the priorities. So I say personal pool priorities. What's the institutional priorities? And the pool and the priorities, the pool, you can absolutely control the person, the you. Like, what are you bringing? What's your merits? Like, how are you showing up? What are you talking about? What have you done in the past, right? So you're unique. What makes you unique in how you talk about and package yourself, absolutely in your control. The pool, to a certain extent, could be in your control, depending on when you apply, right? But a lot of it's not in your control in terms of who else is applying with you, right? And then the priorities, totally 100% not in your control, right? And so again, I tell people that because there's I don't even know how many, but I think like somewhere 50,000 seats, right? Or more than that applications. And so just because there's not a spot necessarily in every single school for every single person who applies doesn't mean that the individuals who apply aren't worthy, aren't great, aren't capable, right? It's kind of, there's just limited supply versus the demand, right? And I'm excited about the demand. I want there to be more demand, right? So I would say put that, have that as context, because I feel like people get so wrapped up in this process, but put that into context, that there are things that are in your scope of control and things that are not. And so focus on the things that are really truly in your scope of control, and do your best to make sure that the application that you're putting forward is the best representation of you. And what that means is it's like a mosaic, right? There are going to be things that are unique to you, that you just are an expert at, superstar, and very few people look like you. And then there'll be aspects of your kind of whole mosaic where it looks very similar to everyone else, right? Too. And so think about presenting yourself as a mosaic. Be honest with the areas that are your strengths and the areas that are areas of development. Don't shy away from those. Don't ignore them. Talk about them. Don't let us second guess. You want to be your own voice and advocate in this process, as opposed to us assuming or interpreting things, right? And so be as detailed as possible. Make sure that we understand the areas that are strengths, as well as the areas that you may want to shore up, and how you're focused on shoring those up, right? And so that gives us a fuller sense of who you are, who you hope to be through this journey, right? Through the acquisition of this degree, what you hope to be and how you hope to show up in the world and make an impact. And it allows us then to kind of be able to have the right set of information when we're also looking at other people in the pool of, around which you have applied, to determine, okay, we think this person will really be able to thrive in our community, right? And that's how we look at it. We don't look at it as a fit. Will this person fit in our community? It's like, do we feel like this person will really thrive? Can we get this person to the place that they want to get to, right?
Yes.
And those are important things for us to also consider when we're making our decisions.
I love that. Wow. Yeah. That I really just want to highlight what you just said, because the way you mentioned it is on your website is admissions says you'll be a strong candidate if Duke is confident you will be successful in its program, which I love. I like the way that's phrased. One question I have about your interview process is the open interview period and how that could affect someone's application. Because if I understand it correctly, an applicant could actually interview before they apply versus applying and then getting an interview invite. And so could you just shed some light there?
Absolutely. So we're actually in our open interview period now. They'll go up through October 6th, I think. And so we developed this open interview many years ago because we want to try and get to know as many people as possible. And it's an opportunity. You could do virtual open interview or in person open interview. Open interview just means that you're raising your hand and you're saying, I definitely want to be interviewed. I don't want to take any chances of being invited. So I'm going to sign up myself to do an interview. And it may even be before you've applied, right? So if you applied in early action, we definitely encourage people to try and do the open interview, but you could apply in rounds 1, 2, 3, or 4, but do your open interview in like August through sometime between August and October. We will save that interview. And when you do apply, we will apply that interview to your application. So it is your official interview.
Got it.
Should you decide to raise your hand and say, you know what, I want to interview early. Some people decide to do that, and it's great. We encourage people to, right? Because it reduces the risk. Otherwise, it is interview by invitation. So after every round, we do read applications to determine who we'd like to invite to be interviewed. And even if you don't get invited that first set, doesn't mean you may never get invited, but it's just the first time that we're looking to invite people. So the reasons why some people don't do the open interviews, maybe they're just not prepared. They're just not ready, right? They may not have done enough of their homework on, or just themselves for whatever reason, they don't feel the timing is right to do the interview. And so we absolutely respect that. So it really depends on the individual and whether or not they feel like they're ready to do the interview so early? And if so, we'd absolutely encourage the open interviews.
And one quick question about test scores and standardized tests. Are you guys looking for a certain minimum in terms of like the quant score or the verbal score? I mean, I know you have a very high average GMAT. It seems your middle 80% range is 670 to 760 for the GMAT. Yeah. Like anything our listeners should be aware of here?
Sure. So the short answer is no, we have no preferences. So it's interesting. This most recent incoming class, a third took the GMAT, a third took the GRE, and a third took the executive assessment. Yeah.
Wow.
Which you're like, oh, wow, it's surprising. Yeah. So we do require that you take a test for the daytime MBA program and the accelerated daytime MBA program. So any of our residential programs, basically, we require that you take a test. For our working professional programs, like the executive, the weekend executive or global executive or any of the online, there is a test waiver process that you can apply for, right? But for any of the residential programs, any of our specialized masters, I was telling you about those one-year masters for pre-experience, and all of our residential MBA programs, you must take some type of test, but we're very test agnostic for for our one-year specialized programs, because those are pre-experienced. Sometimes we even would accept the SAT, right? And things like that. So I would just say, focus on the test where you feel like you will perform the best. We purposefully this year in our class profile gave ranges as opposed to our averages, because we don't want people to feel like they got to meet that average, right? If they get below that average, it really is a range. And it's the middle 80% range. So clearly there are people, there's 10% below, there's 10% above, right? So we don't want people to be so focused on the test. It's important, yes, but it is absolutely not the entire picture. And you're not going to get into the program or be shut out of the program solely based on your score, your test score.
Okay. And for scholarships, could you tell us a bit more about how your team views it, bigger picture, and then give us some more details about, I don't know if you can, like what percentage are awarded scholarships, average amounts, what applicants should know to improve their chances? That's a lot there. That's like 5 questions in one.
No worries. We absolutely can appreciate the investment that, we ask our students to make in themselves, and we don't want the ability to finance an MBA to be a barrier. A little known fact is that more than half of the class is awarded some type of merit-based scholarship, and we do only offer merit-based scholarships each year. They range from partial to full tuition, and it is tuition-only scholarships. The only thing an applicant has to do to be considered for a scholarship is to apply to the program. No additional paperwork is needed. As soon as someone is admitted, they then also are told whether or not they have received a scholarship as well. So they are communicated whether or not they have gotten a scholarship at the same time that they are communicated or the admissions decision. We've doubled our scholarship budget during the past few years.
Great.
And we offer a number of named scholarships for alumni endowments and other partnerships. We have a set of new scholarships, the Fuqua Impact Scholarships, and those are scholarships that are aligned with the different centers that we have, the 5 different centers. So if you're interested in being considered for any of those, definitely let us know in the different parts of the application. If you're interested in any of the centers, or if you're interested in a career within any of the areas that the centers cover, because that really helps us understand what's important to you, right? Again, we're trying to use these scholarships to also determine what's important to you in the hopes that they will be attractive, right? We have our Keller Scholarship, which is one of our most prestigious full tuition scholarships. We also have merit-based scholarships that are full tuition without names. We have Forte Fellowships for individuals who support gender equity. We have scholarships, names, endowment scholarships for HBCU. So it really depends, but everyone is considered, domestic and international students alike. You don't have to do anything else except for just to apply to the program in order to be considered. We look at the same sets of criteria that we look for in admissions is the same thing that we look for to determine scholarships. Now, of course, there's a limitation on the budget that we have. So therefore, it's even more competitive, right? But there's no separate set of criteria that we're looking for in terms of determining who merits a scholarship. in addition to our merit-based scholarships, I think our applicants should also think about how they're going to finance their MBA, perhaps through their savings or through loans. And we offer very attractive packages for both international students as well as domestic students. I know that taking debt is not something that would be your first preference, but it is very common, especially in the master's realm, for people to take on some level of debt. And it's very easily serviced once you graduate. Our students get wonderful jobs paying well over six figures. And so they're able to repay their loans in most years, 4 years, 5 years out. At least that's what some of the statistics on GMAC says. So it's an investment that is well worth that initial financial commitment. And we try and do as much as we possibly can to support people in making that decision as much as we possibly can. And again, I'll also add, we also recognize that while these funding opportunities are aimed at making business education more accessible, we also recognize there's other barriers for applicants that require support beyond just the financial assistance. And what I'm referring to is support for our students who are first generation, right? And close to 20% of our class identifies as first generation college students. So that's what I mean by first generation college students. And 2 years ago, our students created a low income first generation experience club at Fuqua. I think we're one of the few MBA programs who has a low income first generation student club for students from similar socioeconomic backgrounds, so that they have a sense of belonging as well. They have a community to lean on throughout their business school journey, and to create access for others who might be contemplating their MBA but have similar concerns or questions, right? The MBA program can, for 2 years, it can be expensive, not just the tuition, but the things that you want to do throughout the 2 years. And not everyone can afford that. And so we want to make sure, again, trying to create a community that's inclusive and that is understanding of all different people's situations and circumstances. We don't want students who might necessarily not be able to afford all the trips and things like that to feel uncomfortable. So these student clubs are really great to help students and their classmates kind of have the sense of belonging and find alternatives to ensure that they still also are connected to the community, that kind of thing. So yeah, very, very excited about that club, very proud of that club.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big one. It's a big deal, right? For students.
No, absolutely. Could I just ask you to highlight the criteria?
One more thing. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one more thing I forgot to mention. So there are some opportunities for paid positions once you are a student. So you can be a TA, a teacher assistant. Those are paid positions. Speaking of the student-driven culture, there are some roles that our second-year MBAs and first-year MBAs hold that are paid positions. So, for instance, our admissions fellows, those are the second-year MBA students who conduct all of our interviews for applicants. Those are paid positions. We have first-year admissions recruitment coordinators, and so they'll help to be like ambassadors. Those are paid positions. We have career fellows, which, second-year MBAs who help the first-year MBAs through their career search journey in concert with the support that they get from the Career Management Center. Those are paid positions. So there are a number of ways. Now, they're not going to pay your tuition, but 5-10 hours or so, it's good for some supplemental income that you might need.
Fantastic. Just to highlight the criteria again, you mentioned it's the same criteria for scholarships as for admissions. Can you just mention those criteria again?
Well, I mean, when I say criteria, it's like we're looking at the same things, right? So we would be looking at your work experience. We'd be looking at your leadership and involvement. We'd be looking at your academic background. We'd be looking at your essays, like all that stuff. Those are the same things that we look at to determine scholarship.
Got it. Could we now talk about careers and how the business school, how Fuqua helps its graduates in the job market as students and alumni? I mean, yeah, what should listeners know specifically about Fuqua?
In terms of access, I'll speak about this in terms of access and training. So from an access perspective, Students have direct access to employers, to jobs, to recruiting events that our employers might have for our students. And the employers are literally getting on planes to come to campus and woo our students. Students and alumni have career coaching support, regardless of where they are in the process and for life. So alumni will get access to, we actually have a dedicated alumni career team to support our alumni throughout their career. And this career management team is over 30 people large, right? And so we have sector directors, then we have career staff who also then connect directly and work and develop relationships with the employers. Our sector directors really are the ones coaching and providing strategy and support to our students. We have a sector director who's specifically focused on supporting the needs of our international students as well. But our international students can go to any of the industry sector directors, too. We have someone who focuses on startups now. So if you want to do your internship at a startup, perhaps you don't want to start your own company, but you want to work for a startup, then we have a sector director who's also an alum, who's also an entrepreneur, who helps our students identify and find startups to work at. So it really runs the gamut from an industry sector perspective, but also from kind of specific types of career opportunities too. Training-wise, we provide a robust curriculum to all the students, breaking down how to execute an MBA job search in any economic condition. It includes how to find roles, how to network and build relationships with the goal of employment, and then the nuts and bolts of interviewing across the many industries and functions that our students find themselves interested in as well. And then alumni have even more targeted training opportunities that are applicable to those with more experience. And again, our team travels to different cities and regions to work with alumni in region, or is accessible if alumni want to contact them as well.
Yeah, I mean,
and then I'd also mentioned the career fellows too. So the career fellows are these second year MBAs who work with our first year MBAs to provide additional support based on the industry they're interested in. Usually these are second year MBAs who may have done their internship at a consulting firm or done their internship at an energy company or something. And so they can give some real relevant knowledge about what it's like, how to prepare for the interview. And then they help coach the first years about, in that process. And then we also have career treks, and those are done by the club. So say maybe it's the marketing club or the energy club or the VC club, right? So they'll put on treks where students go to different cities and meet with companies there. And they do it in partnership with the Career Center. So there's lots of different ways that we create access, both on campus as well as at the location of the company.
I'm wondering if you've seen over your years, right, at Duke, any common threads of daytime MBA students making that successful jump, right? Pivoting their careers to a different industry or function. Like if you have If there's anything you see in those students who have succeeded with their post-MBA careers.
In terms of the characteristics and qualities?
Yeah.
That they exhibit? Okay.
Yeah. Or how people can make the most, right, of the environment there.
I think one is first a mindset. The mindset is, and let me just say, there's a recognition that there's a difference both in mindset as well as priorities for individuals who are coming from another country and wanting to find employment in the U.S. versus someone who already has work authorization, right? So we don't treat everyone as, we understand there's some unique resources and support that our international students need, and we make sure that they get that. But I think broadly speaking, regardless of the situation you find yourself in, I think that having the right mindset, like I'm not going into this process to say, how is Fuqua going to help me find a job, right? I am going to look at this as, how am I going to leverage all the resources that Fuqua has to offer to set myself up best so that I can find a job, right? And it's challenging because there's so much thrown at you in terms of like your schoolwork and social activities. And so you have to prioritize, and it's absolutely fine to focus on career and say curriculum, right? But use all the things all the things available to you, right? So make sure that you're talking to the career staff and the sector directors, explore the different sectors, understand what the roadmap is that they're trying to provide you. Look at them as kind of a coach and a mentor throughout the process to keep you motivated, right? Don't only wait and go to the career center at the very end when everything else fails, right? Also look at your classmates. I think people who are successful are out there reaching out to their respective classmates, right? Because your classmates many times are coming from industries that you might want to go into, right? And vice versa. And so not only leverage your classmates as good resources to understand the role, or understand the industry, or understand the company, but also make yourself available to your classmates to share your wisdom from the industry or function that you came from, right? And of course, I think our students do great in terms of like accessing our alumni, and our alumni are great at responding to them. We have a very proud alumni base, and so they want to do all that they can to support our students. And so, but when you're approaching alumni, it's not, alumni, how are you going to help me get a job? It's like, let me understand your roadmap. Let me understand your career path. Are there particular, advice or skills that you think are relevant and needed, right? And have that kind of more authentic, organic conversation. And you never know where that leads to, right? And so I guess what I'm saying is try not to make this whole process transactional, make it relational, right? From the resources inside the school to help you to the resources outside the school that may be beneficial to you. Make it relational and not transactional.
Love that. And are you seeing any trends in your placement over, say, the past 4 or 5 years where more students are moving into consulting or finance or tech or healthcare?
Let me see. So I would say, I don't have the statistics right in front of me, but definitely when I think about incoming class, they were very similar in terms of the top 5 industries: consulting, finance, tech. Outgoing, I would say consulting's historically been the top one. I would say finance and tech have flipped over the past few years. Sometimes it's finance, sometimes it's tech. Tech has definitely grown. And healthcare is always a strong one as well. I would say energy and the environment's becoming larger, social impact becoming larger and more significant. Individuals may be still opting to go the consulting route, but knowing that further down in the career, the social impact area, sustainability is really important to them, right? Or being very focused on finding those sustainability jobs, which are definitely more prevalent than they were, during my generation. But I would say those are really important to students more and more.
Great.
But, I think consulting is always going to be a big one, right? Just because they're a big employer, right? They're a big supplier of immediately post MBA jobs. So they serve their great purpose too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll link out to your employment stats. I think your team, or the Fuqua School of Business team, like careers team, they do a great job producing those reports.
Yeah.
They're very clear, very detailed. Like, as someone who looks at a lot of those, I really appreciate it. It's like, wow. Like, because I think applicants frankly deserve that level of granularity with the stats, even though I know, having been in business school, how hard it is to collect that information sometimes. I think that it's nice to show that, and make that super transparent. So
yeah, and I appreciate that. And, I think the one thing, just in terms of our career in general, is to know that Fuqua is not a one-trick pony, right? There's so many, we're not just at this school or just at that school, right? And so it's hard to identify an industry where Duke does not have some deep existing relationship with employers. So I feel like it's a very well-rounded opportunity. The opportunities are well-rounded across a diverse set of industries, as opposed to us only being good for certain types of industries, which is good, because more and more we find students who are really interested in such a variety of different types of career paths. And I think at Fuqua, we have something for everyone.
Sure. This has been a great conversation. Is there anything else about your MBA program that you just wish more candidates knew about?
I would say one of the things that I'm going to put a little plug in. Our students have created their own podcast. It's called, and it's interesting because now the podcast has become an official club. So this is a unique example of how an individual or student, groups of individuals can come into the environment and the community, see a need, create, demand, and boom, you have a new club. And it's called the Fuqua Show. So it's a podcast, but it's now an official club. And if you allow, I'll encourage your listeners to check them out on Spotify. There's over 30 episodes. I'm even featured in one of them, talking about overcoming imposter syndrome and how I charted my own course along the way. But the episodes are hosted by one of our wonderful second-year MBAs and the co-founder of the podcast, Thomas Chang. He features interviews from students, faculty, staff, and alumni. I definitely encourage your listeners to check it out and learn, because what they'll learn from these different individuals is the many different perspectives that exist at Fuqua, the achievements of these students both before they came into the program and what they're doing now, right, in the program, how they've taken advantage of being in the program. From a faculty lens, you learn about what our faculty are doing, what's new and cutting edge in terms of the research that they're conducting that has an impact on both business and society, and that shows up in the class and curriculum. And then just generally speaking, it gives you a really good sense for the kind of community and support that you'll find at Fuqua, and the level of inclusion and the level of different lived experiences that exist within our community. And so hopefully by listening to these, you'll find some sense of belonging, or some sense of like identifying, oh yeah, that resonates with me. Oh yeah, that's my experience too, or similar to it. Or, oh yeah, that's a unique, different experience that I hadn't thought about and would be interested in learning more about, that kind of thing. So I would really encourage people to check it out. Again, it's called the Fuqua Show on Spotify.
Be sure. And I'll link to that in the show notes as well. It sounds like a great opportunity to just have like these MBA coffee chats, but having them in podcast form. Shari, thank you so much for your time and this extended conversation, which I really enjoyed, and just being very frank and open about what's going on at Duke Fuqua. And I hope I said that better and better each time. So thank you so much.
Perfect. Oh, thank you so much, Darren. And it's so great to be on this podcast with you again, and to see you doing so well. And I wish you all the best. And hopefully our paths will cross again. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Shari. Thank you. Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Remember, you can get free school selection help and a profile review at touchmba.com. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Just search for Touch MBA.